Thank you, Reverend Michael. Yeah, we got to know each other pretty well at that minister's immersion. On the very last day, we had to take panels. They locked us in this room, right? And we couldn't leave the entire day. And so you had to just wait, and they didn't tell you when you were being scheduled. They just would call your name out, and then you wouldn't go do your panels. So it was kind of nerve-wracking, waiting. And guess who was dead last? This guy. So yeah, I very much remember that day, and I was praying a lot with Reverend Michael. So it is so good to be back in Seal Beach. And man, you all are so lucky to have this music here with the Robbins family. I gotta say, I've been to a lot of churches, and so often, man, the musicians just treat these Sundays as just another gig, right? But this family, Stacy and Rock, they definitely treat this as a ministry. And she was calling me weeks beforehand, talking about my message, trying to find songs that worked, and just making sure everything was vibing together. And you can tell by the way they sing that it's coming from a different place, right? So I know that, man, this community is so blessed to have this music. So thank you guys so much for setting us up and being here. So yeah, trusting the process. So I've been thinking a lot about this community. I'm coming in interesting times, right? The last time I spoke was right when I think Josh had just a couple weeks left, right? Former minister here, Reverend Josh. And now I'm coming, I don't know, what is this, 8 months later? When you have been in this process of transition, and now you're ready to finally start candidating for a new minister. And so as I was in prayer and meditation, for whatever reason, and I was just thinking about this community, the phrase that kept coming to me is trust the process, right? What does this community want to hear? Or maybe not want to hear, we need to hear. Trust this process, right? And I realized process isn't the greatest, it's not the most fun word to hear. No one gets excited when they hear the word process. You know? When I hear the word process, I'm oh God, I have to go through this again? Okay, I'm a spiritual person, I can do this. So when I think about process, man, I was sort of thinking about it, because often when we're in the middle of the process, we're often looking at where we want to go. We know that we have to take the steps to get there, but the process feels to me like you're on this really long road trip, and you're sitting in the back seat, and the driver's going 5 miles underneath the speed limit, and you're just sitting in the back, just waiting are we there yet? That's what it feels like to me. And often the driver doesn't even know where they're going. And you're taking wrong turns, should have taken a left back at Albuquerque. That's a Looney Tunes joke, by the way. But, sometimes can even make, feel like you're going the wrong way, right? But process, if you look at the etymology of the roots of the word process, it actually means to go forward. Even if it seems like you're going in circles or going nowhere, or if you're just the dude in the back saying, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Which there's probably not many, and there could be some in this congregation, I don't know, I'm not naming names. Where it feels man, are we going anywhere with this? Can we just get to the next thing, right? But the process itself is movement. The process itself is evolution. It's moving forward. There is transformation happening right in the middle of it. And here's the thing, you can't skip over it. I've seen communities that have tried to do that, and it does not end well. So this, what you've been going through, that beautiful co-creation statement that you made, that is what is required. And what happens is everything is being laid, the foundation is being laid, and that is so important and necessary, right? But it can be a little weird. It can feel a little weird in the meantime. Any process can feel like that, right? So this trust the process actually is a sports term. Do I got any NBA fans in the house? Oh, again, like 4 people. That's actually less than the first service. I thought there was going to be like twice as much because there's more people here than in the first service. So again, next 5 minutes, I'll be talking to you 4 people. So, trust the process actually comes from this team, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're one of the oldest basketball teams in the NBA. This team has not been good for a while now. They've been one of the worst teams in the league, just have not been able to get together. And so like 2013, 2014, this new owner comes in, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna change this culture, I'm gonna turn everything around. Here's how I'm gonna do it. We're gonna lose. A lot. And because in the NBA, what happens is if the lower you are in the standings, the higher draft picks you get the next year, right? So there's this whole theory about tanking and losing and then, rebuilding your team that way. And lose they did. They got really good at losing. And as a fan, God bless those Philadelphia fans. This new owner came in and he's like, just trust the process, right? So right towards the beginning of this, right in the middle of this, they draft this 7-foot center from Cameroon who was was one of the best prospects, one of the greatest athletes anybody had ever seen. This guy got drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. He was supposed to be the beginning of this rebuilding process, right? Like the foundation, the fixture. And so he gets drafted in 2014, and what happens? He gets hurt before the season even starts. He has to go through surgeries. He faced a death in the family. He didn't end up playing a game for 2 years. So he was recently just interviewed, and I want to share part of this interview with you. This is on Joel Embiid. This is what Joel Embiid. This is what the interview says. And yet it's wild to think that during his first 2 injury-riddled seasons in the league, he didn't play a single game. Embiid was closing to calling it quits and moving back to his home country of Cameroon. I wanted to quit basketball, Embiid told CBS Sports. Just not being able to play the game I loved, the game I was passionate about. I just wanted to quit and go home and forget everything. He paused. The foot injuries, the surgeries, his younger brother's death at age 13. All of this mixed into a toxic stew with basketball pundits calling him a bust. It nearly broke him. He nearly quit the game that eventually would make him a millionaire. I'm glad I didn't quit, he said. And I'm glad he didn't either, because he's on my fantasy team this year. So Joel Embiid, in his first season, which was this year, where he could play a game, ends up making the all-star team. He's starting tonight, which is pretty unheard of. And on top of that, right, they have this Rising Stars Challenge, which is sort of like the All-Star Game light. It's all the young players that they know are going to eventually be All-Stars. And 3 out of the 5 starters on that Rising Stars team is on the Philadelphia 76ers. Ironically, in the middle of this, because this owner got so much flack, he ended up getting fired. But the process that he put in place is showing the fruits of his labor now. And even though that he's not working for the team anymore, I can't imagine that he is not proud of the process that he put in place. Sports analogies can be inspiring. God bless my wife. She doesn't care a lick about sports, and I'm totally obsessed with every single sport. So she just calls every sport sports ball. Is a sports ball game on? Is it the bottom of the third? It's like a basketball game. But what I'm so inspired by, right, is that it can feel oftentimes when you're in the middle of the process that you just want to quit, or that the process is taking too long, or that there could be setbacks that you're experiencing that bring up all of these emotions, right? Sadness, anger, fear, doubt. All of these things can arise when they're in the middle of a process and we're still can't maybe see the end of where it could, and what fruit could come of all of this labor. And what happens in the middle of that, right, I think anytime we're in the middle of a transition, or anytime we're experiencing stress, or anytime we're in the midst of a process in which we're part of of being in the unknown, there's also a lot of our stuff comes up to the surface, right? I can feel people getting uncomfortable in their seats because I think you know what I'm talking about, right? All of our worst behaviors seem to just rear their ugly heads, and we start blaming each other for whatever process we're in and how it's not going the way we want it, or we start taking things personally and getting down on ourselves. And there's all of these behaviors that arise because we're scared. And we're human, right? But in the midst of that, there is something deeper that I believe is always present, and I believe is present for this community. And that is faith. I don't think anybody would be sitting in these chairs right now if you weren't interested at least a little bit in developing your spirituality and treading the spiritual path, right? And the spiritual path is weird because it's based in things that we can't fully see, know, or understand. If anything, there's more questioning than knowing. If anything, there's more being made to be uncomfortable so that growth can happen than just saying everything's all good all the time. If we're really committed to the spiritual path, if we're committed to this thing called faith, we have to actually practice it. We have to lean into our knowing, right? That reading that Sylvia shared is the crux of it. When you're in the middle of the process, there's something deeper that we can lean into, that we can trust. So Ernest Holmes, he says it this way when he talks about faith. He says, in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. In order to keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. So faith is knowing all is well. Keeping it is letting nothing enter our thought which will weaken that knowing that all is well. I think Ernest Holmes is a stronger mind than I. I have a hard time shutting out thoughts. It's impossible. My brain is crazy, especially when I'm in states of fear and doubt and worry. What do I know I can do, right? When those emotions and thoughts start arising is I can allow them safe passage. And knowing all is well is an actually radically inclusive statement. It's not just saying the things that feel good are letting me know all is well. My faith is good when I'm just happy and there's unicorns and Turkish delights everywhere. My poop smells like glitter. Or roses and looks like glitter. It's all inclusive. It's knowing that the worry, the doubt, the anger, the fear, that's all coming up as something that can be healed. There's a deeper revealing of all of the things that are standing in the way of this vision that we've created for ourselves and for our life. Anytime when we create a big vision for our life, anytime we put a big intention into our life, all of the stuff around that is going to arise to the surface, right? When I was doing prayer for, I finally hit a point in my life, I turned 30, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to settle down. Which means I'm ready for actual partnership. I'd been a serial monogamist my whole life, but never fully committed. And I was ready. And so when I was finally ready, all of a sudden I hit a dry spell. People were just not interested in me or for whatever reason. And I knew that, okay, all of a sudden, because what was happening when I put that intention out there is all of my insecurities, all of my self-doubt, all of the ways that I didn't think I deserved this deep love just started showing themselves to me, right? So obviously I wasn't very attractive. I was not very confident about myself in those moments. And so I knew what the work was, right? Was the healing around all that stuff that arises when a big vision is put into place. And that's the good stuff. That's where the spiritual work comes in. That's where we really heal all of these things that have been running in our mind and our subconscious and maybe in the deepest recesses of our hearts that we've been walking away. All these weird beliefs about ourselves and maybe other people that come up to the surface when we put a big intention out there in the world, and they come up to be healed. And from a social standpoint, right, when we're doing this kind of work together, that kind of stuff can come up and we can start behaving in weird ways with each other. I'm sure that hasn't happened here at all. So you guys are already enlightened. You're the jewel by the sea. But even then, right, what I know is that the crux of all of this is this deep love. There wouldn't be any anger. There wouldn't be any worry. People wouldn't care so much if there wasn't so much deep love for this place. And that same love that created all of that neurotic behavior also has the ability to bring us back together. That we can find our way back to each other. And there's nothing that has been done that can't be healed. There's nothing that has been said that can't be forgiven. And that actually, the bonds that are created in times of turmoil and transition, change and process are stronger because of it, because they were forged in the fire, right? And those bonds become even stronger. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing for all of these things to come up. And it's a blessing to be in a community, which I know, okay, this is my second time here, but I just have a good sense about you guys, that you're actually loving, forgiving, beautiful human beings. And this, right, this is the place out of which actually social justice is born. Because social justice is about understanding, realizing, and empowering every single voice. And it's weird in a church when there's one voice talking. That's why we need to get into circles as well and out of rows sometimes, which I think you guys are doing. Classes, small groups. Because ironically, we have this teaching where we say that every person has access to this deep wisdom. Every person is an emanation of the divine. Every voice is the voice of God, right? And in this time where there's not a minister, we can start to believe that we need this one person to tell us what to do, how to think. But what it can call from us in this moment is understanding it's like, oh, no, the minister plays one role. And the community is really what we're doing here, and that we can utilize and reflect the wisdom that we talk about to each other. And in times of transition, more than any other time perhaps, lean into that. Maybe we have to trust our own wisdom a little bit more during times of process. Maybe we have to be the ones that reach out if there's been a conflict. Maybe we have to lean into these folks that we've been sitting next to in a deeper way. Maybe we have to allow the wisdom that is present in these seats and within each one of us, we have to allow that to come through in more powerful and deeper ways. And how beautiful is that? Because if we as ministers, even subconsciously, are giving the message that you need us, we are failing at our job. The wisdom is present within you. And this is the perfect moment to realize that and to practice that. And to love even harder so that you can find yourselves, your ways back to each other and make way, till the soil for this beautiful vision to emerge. For this minister or ministers to hold the place in this community that allows everybody's wisdom to shine and come forth. What else are we doing here? But to remember that. You don't need a minister to tell you that. You know, all these other voices, faces, and beautiful lights to show you that. So now, more than ever, you can lean into that and allow the wisdom of each person to come through. So let's ground all of this into some prayer and contemplation. Man, how good it is to be in the presence of so much light. How good it is to literally be shown the face of God in each person that I meet. How good it is to know that even in the midst of process, there is life. There is love. And so what I know for each and every person is that life and that love comes through. And that nothing can hold us back from each other, from seeing and witnessing and appreciating and bringing out that love and that light and that wisdom that is present within each and every being on this planet. And we just allow everything that has shown its face as something opposed to that. We allow those to be reflected in a way where that too can transform into an act of love and of reconciliation and forgiveness, that we can find our way back to each other. And know that there's nothing that can't be forgiven. That love is the truest truth of the planet, of life, of the universe itself, so we give ourselves to that, even if it's incredibly uncomfortable and awkward. We allow all of it to be a part of the divine that is our lives unfolding right now. And so what I know is, as we realize that, the joy of life literally comes on its own. That we don't miss how beautiful it is to live on this planet with all of these beings who are emanations of the divine. That all we got to do is just look at each other and know, God is good. We are here. We are alive. Thank God for that. Let love flow and know there's nothing we got to do but get out of the way of that. So we let it. We let that all just arise to the surface to be healed, and we let love shine. And it's from this place that we give so much thanks for being alive together right now. What else are we doing? We let it be, and so it is.